What's going on? Coach Luca from Big Round Fitness and Performance, and I got my China gear on. I don't know why. People ask me like, what is this? You're on the China team? No, I just like the gear. Hey, but check it out. This is what I'm going to talk about today. Actually, we're going to go through a series of exercises, all pulling exercises. All right. I get this question so much. First of all, how do I add variation in training with pulling? Why is it so important? First of all, like the majority of people that come through our doors, we're looking at a lot of sedentary people sitting around or standing jobs, but where we get this extension-based posture, forward head posture, slump shoulders, and naturally we want to balance out, but balancing out usually means adding more pulling variations into the program, right? Now, there's a lot to this beyond just like, hey, pulling exercises are great because you got to do them the right way. So, starting off, I wanted to, before we go into, because I'm going to give you a lot of ideas today with different things that you can do for pulling exercises. And obviously, we have horizontal pulling or vertical pulling. And, we do stick mostly, because like I said, when people are very extension-based, we don't do a ton of overhead pulling because most people don't actually have, remember, if they have a hard time pressing, and we do an overhead flexion test, and they can't pass it, and, they can't press overhead right, with good form or without pain or whatever, putting them into all these pulling variations is not, like chin-ups, pull-ups, and things like that. A lot of times can aggravate shoulders, can aggravate neck, can aggravate a lot of different things. So I'm not saying yay or nay. I'm saying that comes from an assessment. But, and we will cover vertical pulling variations, but a lot of the times, we stick to a lot more of horizontal pulling, right? The things that in every other exercise, because I'm not going to go deep into the form in the drills. We're going to run through the drills so you get ideas. I will coach a little bit, but not super deep. The main thing that we want to look at, with rowing variations is pretty much this, right? Most people are going to be in like an extension-based posture. So we want to get that rib cage down in this neutral position, right? So imagine if you breathe everything out, right? Now I'm in a neutral position. Now, obviously, this is going to take an assessment, but a lot of the people you're going to be working with are going to be in extension, right? So now I'm neutral. My rib cage is where it's supposed to be. It creates a better position for my shoulder. In PRI, we call this the zone of apposition where the diaphragm can work like it's supposed to work. So from here, we also want to have a neutral head posture, right? So neutral neck, right? So tucking the chin a little bit. So if you looked at me from the side, you can see how everything is aligning. Now, if I'm doing a bent over row, right, whether I'm doing a row with 1 foot up, whether I'm on a TBar row, doesn't change, right? If I'm doing a TRX row, we're still looking for that position. So that's one of the things that we want to look at so people are not in this super extended position rowing, because what it's going to do is low back is going to get affected, core's not going to work. Usually we're going to get rotation going on. And also, we're going to get this anterior humeral glide. So that's the other thing that we end up looking at is when I row, and this is a good position for you to see, right? If I'm in extension, forward head posture, when I row and the elbow comes past my body, you can see I can actually feel the humerus sliding forward. So that's not a good thing, right? That's why usually you don't want to see the elbow go either past the body or far past the body. And I'll usually just put my hand here to see if I get this sliding forward. Now, if I breathe everything out, I'm in neutral, right? Usually what you can't, like you literally won't be able to go past this just rowing. If I try to go past this, I'm cranking my shoulder, my biceps is going to get strained, all types of things. But this is what you see a lot, right? So the row is actually affecting the back and just feeling like you're getting more range of motion is not a good thing, right? So that's one of the things. From the side, you'll also see a lot of people row very, very closely. Now, if you have this rounded posture, and if I start rowing, you'll see how fast I get this bone, like basically the humerus, to kind of pop forward, right? So we'll actually, after we correct the posture, get like about 135 degrees on a lot of these things, because now it allows me to not get that humeral glide coming forward, right? So those are some of the things that, and we already did a row video, but those are some of the things you really want to look at, no matter what rowing variation it is. And as we're going to go through like this video series, as you'll see, there'll be a lot of rolling variations. We're not going to spend a ton of time on each exercise, but you're going to see what we're doing. Keep in mind, we always are looking for that great posture so that the right muscles are getting worked. We're also training, training core, we're training stability, right? Because, hey, even though we're doing a TRX row, if I'm in a really good position, this has got to work, right? Glutes got to work, everything's got to work, okay? So as we go into this series, if you've ever had kind of like a dilemma with what you're going to do in your program with rowing exercises, you're going to need a lot of ideas right here. All right, what's going on? So we're going to start off in the, let's just say in a one-arm row series here on a bench, which most of you have probably most likely seen. And we did a whole video on how to make sure the form is good, right? So we're pushing that ground away, so we're pushing that bench away, so we're nice and stiff. We're going to have this bent knee. So with this, so we want to have the arm right under that shoulder, right? Our regular row variation, right? Like I say shoulder in the socket, elbow into pocket. But from here, we have that neutral position. We can also go elbow up position, right? More challenging, so the loads are going to change for this, right? So we got neutral, boom. Or we can go up. From here, we can do isometric holds. We can do pauses and then control downs, right? So the variations for how many different things we can do on a one-arm row are going to be pauses. We can just do full-on iso holds. We can do eccentrics, right? We can even do a controlled up, and we can change the position of the elbow. So, or should I say, we're in neutral position here. We can go pronated, right? Elbow up. We could even do, right, this position, right, where the bicep comes into play more. So we can switch positions of the arm. We can switch whether we're doing a pause and eccentric or even quasi-isos, which would mean basically we're stopping in different positions and holding it for a certain amount of time, which becomes very, very difficult, but we're adding time under tension in certain weak points. Okay, now, from here, we had support of the leg. Now we're going to bring it back to this three-point position, right? So now we're standing. We only got 1 point of contact instead of 2, which obviously means we're going to start engaging more core. Now, when we do these rowing variations, depending on the program, we can plug in whether we got more core, more stability or not. And like I said, the answer whether you should do that or not determines what do you need in your program, what do you want to achieve. So here we're taking some of the stability out. I got that rib cage nice and down, neutral neck, same thing. We can go neutral, we can go elbow up, we can go more bicep based. We can also bring the stance together and then come on the outside. Now what that does, once again, I'm going from more stable to less stable, right? Whenever there's less stability, more muscles got to fire, core's got to be more engaged, right? And it just becomes more difficult. From here, we can take it a step further and go into a push-up position, right? Elevated. Once again, I'm not collapsing here. I'm nice and solid. I'm pushing away. I'm not letting my hips move. My glutes are firing. Go elbow up. Right, I could go pump. So obviously in these positions, much more core engagement, and you can see where I'm going with this, right? So once again, if you want to go heavier, you're probably going to go with more support, because as soon as we start taking away stability, points of contact, you're going to have a tougher time lifting heavier weights or have a tougher time keeping the form the way that you want it to, right? It's like neither bad or good. It's just a question of what are you trying to achieve. If you're going to go heavier weight, lower reps, right, you're probably going to have more stability in certain exercises. So they're going to be main core exercises. They're going to be either supplement or assistance, all right? So a great one with support, since we're on the bench here, then becomes the chest supported row. And you know, on the bench it's going to be different than it is on a TBar row, which we're going to show too. So I like to have the neck above the bench so I can keep it nice and neutral. I'm firing my glutes. For a lot of people that have this anterior pelvic tilt, right, we're going to flatten it out, right? So butt's tight, we're going to flatten it out. And here, once again, I can roll, pause, got the neutral neck. You can also, like, these are pretty heavy for going elbows up. We could also go palms up, right? Now, what I also like here is the bat wing holds, where you just come up and we're just holding, right? So once again, we can change all the variations of the arms: neutral, pronated, supinated, right? Arms more involved, or bat wing holds, with the Dan John one. You can actually do bat wing holds also on the bench down and just hold them here, right? Which changes the angle and keeps you completely flat and makes it more difficult in the upper back. Once again, those are just isometric ones, and they're really, really good for people that are learning that posture, right? So the rib cage is down, packed neck, getting those right muscles firing to really feel them. Now, so from here, obviously, there's another set of exercises that we can do that are more assistance-based, a little bit lighter, and I'll show you that in 1 second. All right, some of the assistance exercises that use like lighter weights, but are great to build some muscles that a lot of times are weak. They're great for shoulder stability. We got to make sure we're in good position. So I'm going to show them to you on, like I said, the bench supported, but we can do all of them standing. I'm actually going to probably just going to stand up and do them with unsupported without the bench, but we'll start off here. So we got our regular lateral raises where our palms are just going to be up. Same thing, right? We're going to tuck that butt on, get the butt tight, get that rib cage down and breathe out a little bit, tuck the chin. So from here, we just got our lateral raises with the palms up. What's really important here is that you move well from the shoulders, right? So one of the things we'll teach is that when we're doing any of these movements, that the humerus so it doesn't flare forward. So it's important to teach first to make sure that everything is moving well and that we're not doing this wrong and cranking our shoulders, having bad form. From there, we can have our T's. With our T's, we'll have, for instance, thumbs up will be same position, rib cage down but tight. From there, we also have eyes, right? So our eye is going to be just straight up. I probably could have a lower bench on this as well. From here, we got L's, right? We're going to come up. So that's our external rotation. Also, W's, we start in this position, probably slide up a little bit. So start in this position and coming out into that W. So when we actually have a good position on these, you're not going to get tons of range of motion, meaning that when we get our rib cage down and we pack our chin, right, you're not going to feel like you're going all over the place, right? So, but you are going to feel that upper back like really contracting. So these are more upper back exercises, more so than lats and things like that. But we're covering back, period. So this will be more in that 10, 12, 15 rep range. You're not going to crank this out at like 5 to 10 rep range. So that's important. Now, what I was saying here is that we could do that same sequence either on a Swiss ball, right? So laying out on a Swiss ball, kind of taking some stability away, or we can just do it in this bent over position, right? So rib cage down, neutral neck, right? We still got our posterior flies, right? We can still do our eyes. And the thing is, so I'm having a neutral spine here. This is actually easier for me because I can drive with the legs, which is why I prefer this, because we don't have as much compensation. So you'll see a lot of people, you know, using the legs and pushing through on that, which I don't like, which is why I love the supported, basic chest supported on the bench. All right, so now we're gonna go a kind of bent over series. But the thing is, I'm gonna use kettlebells. Remember, we can use dumbbells with this, we can use sandbags with this. You know, like I said, unilateral, we can do a lot of different stuff. The implement I'm using here is just kettlebells, right? So the bent over row series, we're gonna start with this wider stance once again, right? I stand wider, I get that rib cage down. The main thing is, like, you don't wanna lean forward. You see a lot of people rowing from here, and it's gonna stress their low back, where I wanna load the hips up more, right? So I can go double row here. Now I can pause it on the ground, or I can just break. Okay? So the wider I go, the more stability I have. I can step in here and go closer now. Right, so it's not gonna, when you get that rib cage down, when you get a good position, it's actually not gonna feel like you get tons of range of motion. From here, what we can do, we can start doing alternating. Now we can alternate two ways, right? One comes up, the other one goes down, right? Or we can go, one stays up while the other one rows, right? Or waiting for it at the top. So one gets more tension. Now we can do that same thing, but now go closer stance, okay? With kettlebells or with dumbbells, we can do the same thing with turning the elbows out, right? So coming up here or turning them in. Most of the time, like I said, we're gonna keep things, depending on what shoulders are like. Shoulders are pretty beat up. We're gonna try to keep them neutral as much as possible, because turning like this or like that many times can aggravate that capsule, depending, like I said, on the posture and what's going on. So remember, you can do this with kettlebells, dumbbells, bands. We'll go over some different stuff, but those are some variations that you can add in right away. All right, so we covered two kettlebells. I'm going to cover a couple of things that you can do with one. So when we just do one kettlebell, right, the total body load is not as much, but we're going from, right, bilateral to unilateral. So it's going to create, we need more stability now. Most of the time, depending on what we're doing, it's going to obviously take more core work. So same things, we can go wide here and roll. What I like to do is keep this arm here to make sure that the humerus is not sliding forward, right? So it means I got that good roll position. Right, we can do the same things as I talked about earlier, as far as pauses, as far as negatives, as far as turning that elbow up, as far as turning it in, right? We can do all those different things. What we can also do is stagger, right? We can stagger our position now to where we have more instability. Once again, anytime I take away points of contact, it becomes more difficult, especially on my core. Here, the leg's also going to be working, because now it has to stabilize, right? So I got this position where glutes firing, nice and tall spine, and I'm rowing. Now we could also do this with two kettlebells, obviously, which would be more difficult. But as soon as we stagger and we use just one kettlebell, automatically now I have to stabilize in the trunk more. I have to stabilize that hip. I have to stabilize that leg. So it becomes more difficult. Depending on, like I said, what you're trying to achieve in your training program, that might be a variation. Now, everything goes just like we talked about. Hand positions, right? Or pauses, negatives, holds, all these different types of things. One kettlebell, two kettlebell. I hope that you kind of are starting to see the flow of how we can change something in a program just by taking away a point of contact, stability, you know, changing tempos using isometrics. We didn't talk about speed, but basically that's what we're talking about, right? Fast on the up, pause, controlled on the down. So we can change tons of different things just by that. All right, one of my favorite exercises is called the Renegade Roll. Like I said, I don't make these names up because sometimes, you know, but it's an easy way to recognize what we're doing. Same thing, I'm going to use kettlebells in this one. Obviously more unstable, more challenging. You can do this with dumbbells. You can do this with sandbags. You can do it with a lot of different things. I just like kettlebells because they're a little more elevated. So we're pretty much going to go into a push-up position. We're going to stagger the stance. So this is important, like I said, because the closer you get, the more instability there is. It's a lot harder to maintain good position, right, and not turn your hips and lose control. So I'm going to go wider, shoulder width apart or wider. Squeezing my butt here, staying nice and tight, not letting myself collapse, right, pushing away. Now, whichever bell I'm not rowing, I'm really driving it into the ground. So the opposite, I'm driving it to the ground. So this one I'm going to drive into the ground now. So the key here is, obviously, we got to create as much tension from the toes all the way up, transfer that force. So yeah, sure, you know, I can roll 150-pound dumbbells. You're definitely not going to do that here. But the point is, we're creating more tension throughout the whole body. Trunk's working, right? We got to have that synergy. We got to have all these different things going on. And like I said, this is a great assistance exercise that will build on other things as well. But it is much challenging because you can cheat, but put it this way, when you're doing it right, you really feel the connection, and it really becomes more challenging on the row as well. It's kind of like, you know, think about many times, like if you're standing up and pressing a kettlebell, pressing a dumbbell, and then you get into the squat position, and we're taking things away, right? The SOTS press, it becomes, you know, a 20-pound kettlebell becomes extremely challenging where somebody may be able to press a 100-pound, right? So we're just changing positions, points of contact, leverages, center of gravity, all types of things, and making it more challenging. All right, I'm going to come back with a variation where we're elevated, and it's somewhat more challenging, but we can keep the tension on this. All right, so this is pretty much kind of like stepping it up a notch where we're going to increase range of motion. Also, we're going to increase instability, right? So I'm going to go 3 points of contact here. Okay, so we think about Renegade Roll, but now we're going to elevate. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to push the ground away. But now look at that range, and I can let my scapula glide here. So I'm still going to make sure butt's tight, my hips not moving. Now, just to show a quick switch up on like even just this variation, which is definitely advanced, you know, how we can switch it up with implements. Now, I wanted to take pretty much the same weight, so that's a 55, this is about a 50-pound sandbag, but the distribution of load is different, and this is completely is uneven. So a dumbbell will be different than a kettlebell, will be different than a sandbag, so we have variations there, right? We can still do the pauses and the control downs, quasi-isos, all of that. If we wanted to work, we're working with athletes, or we're working, you know, there's a weakness that we have, like a pinch grip or a, like I said, just a grip. I train quite a few BJJ athletes. We'll do things where they actually have to, especially if they're doing gi, right? I mean, there's a lot of different ways that we can implement this, but this is like an old school sandbag, so it's pretty similar to what a gi would feel like. So we can go into this same position, and now we got that core, we got that grip working, right? It's more specific, so I really the fingers are really crushing, and it's gonna be more specific. But like I said, depending on, you know, nothing happens without the goal of the athlete or the client, the assessment, where are the weak links, what they need, what level they're at, and then we can progress these things. But I wanted to get a lot of these ideas out because even in just this variation, 1, 2, 3 different tools, dumbbell 4 different tools, right? And then we can start using iso holds, eccentrics, explosive ups, band resisted stuff, right? So to get the juices flowing, not only for something more specific to maybe what you need, but also just a variation of what you've been doing and now taking it up a notch. All right, so now we're going to do some bent over barbell row variations, which let me first touch on these. For many people, they're not the best option. Like I said, if somebody's got good form, they got a great hip hinge, their core is strong, starting these with somebody that hasn't really kind of like corrected their posture, increased their anterior core strength, got a stronger posterior chain, it may not be the best choice, like I said, because they may be governed by low back endurance, okay? But there's still a great exercise in the sense that, a lot of muscles end up working. So I'm going to basically unrack this and go into my hip hinge position. So butt goes back. Remember, we're not bending over. So what we're not doing is just bending over, right? This is going to kill the back, right? But if we sit back into our glutes, use the hips, we've got multiple progressions here. Overhand to the belly button, right? So same thing. Rib cage down, pack neck. From here, we can also do turn around grip, right? So supinated here, palms to the belly button. Now, there's also a variation where we can go up to the neck, which I'm not, like I said, once again, I would only advise it when somebody's really strong, has got good posture, doesn't have any issues. But in this situation, we roll here, right? We roll higher, much, much higher, which becomes this posterior delts, right? So, right? So it's hitting that upper back. Once again, it's a variation. We don't use it much, but it can be effective if all things are in check. Now, there's a way to take some of that low back load off, which is to rest the barbell on the ground, right? That means that somebody has to have good hip mobility, because if they don't, they're going to be rounding. But I have good hip mobility here. I can rest it on the ground, and then from here, roll and put it back down. Okay, so that takes off obviously some of that low back load, but it also takes the tension off the lats if we want that. Now, a great variation, and I've shown this when teaching the deadlift. With Adrian, we did this drill. What this does is for people that have a tough time engaging their lats, I have to pull the bar back, okay? So I'm going to have to center this a little more so it's even Steven. So I'm pulling it back. So guess what I have to do when I pull this back? I have to engage my lats. And I can do it without the paws on the ground. So as you can see, same load, definitely a lot more work on me, okay? Now, I'm going to unrack this real quick. This was a regular bar. As you can see, here on the side, I have a thick bar. So the thick bar, as it says, it's a thick bar. But you can see how much harder it is for me to get around that. So that forearm work, that grip work with a thick bar, obviously changes a lot. And because you have to crush it, also can get those lats engaged a lot more. Now, the other one that we love to use, which is a little bit heavier, is the neutral bar, which is what we'll use for benching heavy with people that have some shoulder issues. And you can get multiple neutral grip variations going on in that bent over position, okay? So as you can see, we've got bar changes with thickness, with the way the grip is. We can do like turn, obviously, Our hand positions, what I didn't talk about, but is a given every single time. We can do pauses, we can do eccentrics, we can load up to create extra tension with the bands, and we can, like I said, we can pause on the ground, and rep ranges here can change too. So you have a bunch of different variations. Remember what I said about this variation, that a bunch of it is based on core strength, low back endurance, and also hip mobility. And if for somebody that's starting off, these might not be the best variations. But if you're intermediate, advanced lifter, and you've been doing it for a while, and you know that you can pull this off, then that's a great variation that you can implement. All right, so we're back here with basically a lot of rope variations. And I know I'm showing you guys some things with equipment that you may not have or you may have. Some of it is like very cheap and easy to get, and can really do a ton. And I love ropes because it's obviously very functional in a, well, let's use that word again, functional, right? But it's they emulate a lot of real world things, especially if we're talking about sports. And I love obviously adding in body weight movements because it's a lot more integrated, it's a lot more real world, along with using weights and using a lot of different things. So here, what we're going to do, we're just going to change up some things that we already do with, and I'll show you the TRX series. But here we have a shorter rope that's like looped around. So we're just going to do our regular body weight rolls, right? So now we got to, the great thing about it is on a TRX or even on a barbell, which we'll touch on, you can kind of let that grip go, right? The grip can get loose, wrist can kind of start bending, a lot of things can start happening that kind of make your shoulder pop out, and then you can start rowing from the bicep and let that shoulder slip forward. Whereas here, if you start letting loose, you're falling on your ass, right? So I have to crush these ropes, right? So the more I crush them, the more my lats get engaged. So butt's going to be tight, rib cage is down, and obviously we can change the angles here. We can also get our feet up, which I'll slide this a little further in, and I'll show this on everything. Obviously we can change these angles to do a lot of different things. See me making adjustments on the go. Right, so that's obviously a lot more challenging. So all we're doing was we're changing the grip implement. What's even more challenging, I'm going on this rope because it's a single, it's not going to slide through. Been implementing these a lot, is single arm, right? So imagine, same thing, single arm rows. Now we're trying to, the body's trying to rotate, it's trying to do a lot of different things. Here what I like to do is put my hand front of shoulder and make sure once again that I am not allowing that shoulder to slide forward, right? Very, very challenging on the grip. Now, if we want to start putting in an actual hand over hand variation, we'll usually start climbs on the floor. So meaning that my feet are actually touching the ground, right? I'm going to climb down and I can have more locked out knees. I can have a little more bent knees. Climbing back up. Just tap, coming back down. All right, so I want to not be rounded here. I want to keep my abs engaged, going up and down. Obviously, the harder you make the angle, the harder it's going to be. Another thing that can really help with grip work and adding tension is doing this slowly, where I'm basically going hand over hand, letting this one go, right? Coming back up, and then when I go back down, switch arms. So really slowly, right? Because that allows for that one arm to do the full pull and keep a lot of tension on it. If we want to add range of motion, we want to change the angle, this becomes a lot more challenging now. I'm going to actually have to slide this back probably a little bit. Now we're almost leaning back, so this angle makes this a lot harder, and when I come up to the top, there's more tension just being able to hold on, so more constant tension. Find my glutes, keep the core engaged, coming back down, right? Now, we can add a weight vest to this. If we want to do accommodating stuff, we can put a kettlebell with a band attached around our hips. So the higher we climb, the more it's pulling us back. when we go down, we actually have to decelerate. Now, these are some more, I would say, advanced techniques, but depending on how long you've been training, might be something to spur some growth, make it more fun, more challenging, something new. We're gonna cover chin-up variations later on, but with the rope, like I said, there's many things that we could do. And here, we actually have a longer rope that is further in the back. We can do climbing variations. You know, with kids and stuff, we'll have them use legs, especially on that one, where they can climb, use the legs to come up. You know, this is more challenging here, where we now start taking the legs out of it. Right, we can climb up and down. We can do multiple reps. We can also, for grip strength, just grab, do chin-up variations. Right, we can use two. So now we got both arms, parallel positions. Tons and tons and tons of grip work, right? You gotta crush it, otherwise you'll be done. Now, just like we do all our variations with a TRX, and we can do Ys and we can do external rotations, we can do the same thing here with the ropes, where we get our angle, right? Coming out here, external rotations, we can do Ys. The great thing about it is I can't can work T's. The difference is I have to keep crushing that rope for me to stay on it. Whereas on the TRXs or different implements, you can start kind of like letting loose onto your fingers and still doing the drill, but not getting as much engagement out of it, right? So as you can see, there's plenty, and to this, we can, like I said, change angles, can add weight vests, can add bands. Of course, there's the rep ranges that we talk about as well. But if you've just been doing barbells, machines, and dumbbells, you know, adding things like kettlebells and ropes will create a huge difference in your training, because number one, it's going to start working your grip more, right? And remember, anything that you hold in your hand, the stronger the grip, the more transfer of force there is, right? So sometimes people say, how do I improve my bench? How do I improve chin-ups? Hey, get your grip stronger, right? You'll be able to transfer more force into the bar, into the implement, and move through it, right? So those are some of the variations on the ropes that you can start plugging in right now. It's going to do a ton of good into your program, and it's definitely going to grow your back. Back here with my modeling pose for you guys. All right, so check it out. Inverted rows. You know, this is the barbell variation. As you can see, like a lot of things are just exchanged from implements, but it does make a difference. So if, you know, you're doing a 4-week phase where some of your assistance work is TRX rows, and then you're switching to inverted, it's going to be different, right? So here, I'm actually pretty low on this. The cool thing about it, if you're using it with clients or anything like that, you can just elevate the bar. Couple of things, right? I can be completely straight, so I'm hanging, I'm squeezing my butt, I'm getting my rib cage down, and from here, right, coming up. Long neck. Same thing, we can do pauses, we can do all types of stuff. To make it a little more, I say less challenging, we can take, once again, we're just shortening levers, right? As soon as we shorten that lever, it becomes a little bit easier. So we get into a glute bridge position. And I have to adjust my technique actually a little bit. I'd probably bring it a little bit higher for that. It's pretty low. Now, from there, we can do the same thing with a single arm. This is really challenging. It's challenging on the grip, and it's challenging on actual pull as well. And you'll see, if I go single arm right here, I'm actually going to bend my knees a little bit. Been doing a lot of pulling work already. So, right? So I'd actually probably bring, to be honest with you, I'd bring that bar up a little higher if I was doing, you know, a 10 to 12 rep range, maybe even an 8, right? I felt like I was losing form there a little bit, but hey, This is real world, real time. It's a good way to show you how challenging some things can be. Now, whether, like I said, I elevate this or brought it down, to make it more challenging again, we can do elevated feet. And also what I love to do with this, I think that this is something that's not done enough. Inverted rows are done, and then a lot of times it becomes like, well, they're not that hard. Well, first of all, this level right here is difficult, right? If I added a weight vest, 10, 20 pounds, this would become really challenging, right? If I added elevated feet to this, okay, because now that whole posterior chain's working, so I'm coming up, firing glutes, firing hamstrings. Right, so now, as you can see, I haven't even loaded anything up yet, and much that would have been a good 10 to 12 rep set for me with no weight. Now, what we will also start doing is putting weight on the hips, 25-pound plate, like I said, weight vest, but then 25-pound plate on the hips, so that we can actually drive the hips through, squeeze the butt, keep that core more engaged, and do isometric holds, control down, let the scapula glide, right? So there's tons of different things that we can do on this, and I believe this is actually one of the most underutilized exercises, because many times people are like, hey, I want to build muscle. You know, inverted rows are not going to do much, but they're awesome, right? Tension is tension. When you change the angles, when you start adding more difficulty, loading up weight, it's really going to be a great variation for you to implement into your training program. All righty, we're back. Did I even leave? I think we cut these videos, so probably didn't leave. But check it out. So these are Jungle Gym XTs. Obviously, you can use TRXs. We got TRXs here. There's a lot of, there's so many different things that we can do with this. Love them for rowing variations. Definitely in group training classes, they're absolutely fabulous. But in your training program, if you're doing, by yourself, trying to build, like I said, upper back strength, get the lats involved, just pulling variations like we said that we were talking about, these are awesome. I think that a lot of times, people say, well, there's only one variation or a couple variations, and that's what I got. And I just wanted to cover some things here that that might spur some ideas that you can put into the program. All right, so we got our regular, obviously we got our regular rows, right, which, once again, I want to always make sure that we're on top of line with the form. So butt's tight, rib cage is down, pack chin. Okay, so when we come up, main thing is those shoulders don't slide forward, right? So we really got the lats working. So this is just our basic variation, which we can then make more challenging. We can elevate feet like we did with the rope rows. We can add a weight vest. We can add weight to the weight once we get our feet elevated. Now, then we got our single arm variation, right? Same thing here. What happens is that we start engaging core a lot more because your body's going to want to twist. So now we got to have some anti-rotation here. Same thing. And a lot of times I'm going to put that hand up here to make sure that shoulder doesn't pull forward. Okay. Another one is adding a little more core plus rotation. Is I'll go a little bit lower and actually turn open. If I was a little bit lower, I'd actually try to get my elbow to the ground here. Shoulder in the socket, pull up, open. So I'm actually opening my hips up to that, right? So I'm not just rotating, I'm opening my hips up, getting the shoulder into the socket, keeping that rib cage down, pulling through. A couple of other variations, I'll actually go on this side, which we've started using a lot lately. Used it back in the day, but Eric Cressy kind of gave me a great reminder to start using this again. It's TRX Rows, and we're going to load with the kettlebell, right? So now we're packed here, rib cage is down. So great way to add extra load. Right? Is add that kettlebell in the rack position. Find that angle, like I said, you want to make sure that you don't start loading it up heavier because just to add weight, and then we're starting to get that shoulder slipping forward. We got bad form on rotation. Our low back is banged up. Another way to do this also, when we have a low enough angle, is to punch it out, right? So in here, we'll be in this situation. Rib cage is out with a reach. Right, so once again, maybe that might have been even too heavy if I was going for 10 at that angle, right? So we want to find that challenging angle where we can keep everything nice and tight and nice and in line. As you can see, I'm just doing some reps pretty challenging. Grappler rows, which I would probably lower this a little bit more. Now, with these, it's more about explosiveness and definitely something that I would say we're using with athletes, plug it into the conditioning part of it. But, right, so where we're going to explosively pop up into that row and push away. Right, so it's not as much tension here because once we punch through, we're actually pushing away. But like I said, it's great to use for conditioning. It's great to use to generate that power, because even in pulling variations, something that we didn't talk about is, you know, the speed, right? So when we do chin-up variations, we also work on the speed of the actual concentric movement and then pauses, controlled negatives, and things like that, right? So those are just some of the variations that you can do with the TRX rows. Like I said, there is more, but I just wanted to spur some kind of like not only creativity, but new variations that you can plug into the program for upper body pulling. All right, back here with the core trainer, right, or landmine. I used to call it landmine, now it's core trainer. Another great device for a device. What am I talking about, right? But it's another great tool that we use for a lot of stuff. I mean, it's awesome for presses. It's awesome for, you know, core work and a bunch of different things. But there's tons of great rowing variations that we can do with this. So starting off with, I'm obviously not loading it really heavy right now, but the weight's on there so you kind of see the positioning of things. We got these handles. These are from Spud Inc. that are great for other band stuff that we can use for rowing. We'll show you later. But we'll loop these around if we're doing a bent over row. But this really has, first of all, it's great for gripping, right? We can get into this position and also finish in a nice position without letting our shoulders fall forward and use pretty heavy weight. You know, you'll see people doing also mixed grip stuff, which you can do. You know, also V handles, right? But once again, this is one of those bent over positions that I do like, but somebody has to be pretty proficient at it. Okay. From here, we'll go. If you think about our bent over series when we did the kettlebell rows, alternating stuff like that, now we're in the same position. The leverage here is different though. So same thing. We're back down here. I can put that arm there to make sure that shoulder's not gliding forward. There we go. Right? From here, what we can also do now is stagger the position. Okay? So when we stagger this position, it's like we did earlier with the kettlebell. Now we're loading up that front, keeping that glute fired, rib cage down, nice and tall neck. Right? And the thing is, if we don't use this other arm to support it, like I said, this hip has to stabilize, the abs work harder. It feels heavier than it is. Now, if I'm here, obviously this becomes easier to do because I have more support. Okay? Now, from here, before I actually show you the bench variation, we can do, it's called a Meadows row, and same thing. Now, we can be in this position, and the elbow can go up. Or we can be here, same thing. Now, to add to it, like we did earlier, right now we're just adding points of support. We can be right next to this with the bench. Three-point position. And we could also turn it so we'd be on that side doing a Meadows row. Or, once again, we could also be in that 3-point position, right, here, doing the row, or 3-point position here, pulling it up. So all we did is we changed this from unsupported, supported with 1 point of contact, supported with 2 points of contact, right? It's going to allow you to use more of a load, and or it's going to allow you to use more of that core, right? So, but absolutely love the core trainer, and you know, we also then switch to that basically grip, that supinated grip, palm up grip, which we won't use a lot. Like I said, for many people that are really internally rotated, you know, we prefer to go neutral. It starts off easier to teach the right variation and keep that shoulder in a nice position. But core trainer row variations, you can do all of the pauses, all of the negatives, quasi isos, speed stuff, attaching bands, you name it. Like I said, adding chains to it, so there's acceleration and it's heavier at the top than it is at the bottom. Actually, that's something we could have done also on the barbells, where the chain, just like you would with a deadlift, is at the bottom. As soon as you pull it off the floor, the chain pulls up. It's a heavier load at the top. When we control it down, it's lighter, right? So we can work on acceleration, and there's more tension at that top position. So implement some of that. Once again, these are, you know, tools that you may not have, but very, very worthwhile. You can do a ton of different things with them beyond rowing variations, but here's just some things that you can plug into your training program. All right, we're going to go, we're back at the bench, obviously. But here, check this out. So I know you've heard of probably a dumbbell pullover, you know, old school bodybuilding exercise. Most people would think, you know, they used to call it, hey, rib expansion, all these different things. But the pullover is actually, it is a great exercise for building that in the back. What I'll say is I'm going to touch on form here a little bit, because there's a bunch of changes that I won't say we've made to it, but we're just implementing based on, you know, knowing what is the healthiest for the shoulders. Because once again, if somebody can't get their shoulder overhead in a good way, right, we don't want to crank this super far out. So watch me as I take you through this, right? The difference here is going to be, first of all, I'm going to go into this glute bridge position, right? And I'm going to squeeze my butt, rip the floor apart. I'm going to get that dumbbell up. And then from here, I'm going to get the rib cage down a little bit. And as I come down, I'm going to breathe out and then pull up with my lats, right? So once again, tuck chin. So what this does is it gets my rib cage, right? So I'm not flaring my rib cage, putting my shoulders in a bad position. I actually end up squeezing my glutes, getting that posterior tilt. As I'm going down, I'm breathing out, right, to get my ribs in alignment with the hips, right? Good zone of apposition. It just means that we can use that diaphragm like we're supposed to, right? And what it does, the main thing is my neck, my shoulders in a good position, and I'm going to feel, you don't have to go all the way down here, right? You might stop here, because that's where your lats may be on stretch based on, you know, what you're capable of. But it's a great exercise, and like I said, if you do it right, also glutes are getting engaged, so the butt's getting engaged, and also your abs are going to be working the way they're supposed to, and you're going to get what you want out of it. Whereas a lot of times, we'll see people doing that drill, and their shoulders will start feeling banged up. Sometimes also neck, if they're really pushing that neck forward, and we want to get out of that. But this is a good assistance exercise, if, like I said, if you're doing it right, and if you don't have really banged up shoulders or any type of cuff or labrum, cuff repair that you've had. Like I said, we got to do an assessment to see if it's right, but try this and see if it's if you can do it. It is a good exercise if it's done right. All right, at the back extension machine, and you might be thinking, what does that have to do with pulling? Well, I mean, obviously, back extension works, hamstrings, glutes, posterior chain. This is something that I absolutely love, and we'll actually do this with a glute ham raise as well. I won't show this one in this series, but remember the glute ham raise, you're just pretty much completely leveled out. Here we got a bit of an angle. And so what we're going to do, here's why this is good, it really teaches you to engage everything, right? So your whole posterior chain, as we're going to hold these positions, right? Rib cage down, glutes firing, hamstrings firing, and then from here, we're going to work that rowing position. Now, yes, you're not going to be able to use weights as heavy, but this is why this is basically assistant stuff. It builds not only core, but how we transfer force when we do the rows, when we do all these different things. And I'm going to do a couple of different variations that's going to show you what's possible and what we use. So starting off, for instance, with dumbbell rows, like I said, we want to get in a good position. I want to make sure I move the mic here. There we go. All right, from here, butt's tight, rib cage is down, neck is packed. We can do our neutral rows. We can do elbows up. Right, we can do alternating. We can keep one up, do the other one. Right, there's many, many different variations that we can do. The key is that core is working, so we're not really back in extension, and that neck is packed, that our glutes and hamstrings are firing, and we're, like I said, we're not in extension, right? We want to get that rib cage down and get that neck nice and tall. So from there, this actually, the Elite FTS one, has an awesome kind of like setup because it's really easy to keep the barbell here. And actually move this out of the way. There we go, a little extra work. So as I go into this position, I'm going to squeeze my glutes nice and tall. So trust me, this is it's a lot of work, and obviously I don't have to take as much of a load to get a lot of effect out here. We can go to the small exercises that we already covered in the incline bench. So our posterior flies, so our T's, our W's, our Y's. Okay, so these are all things that we can do and also get extra work from the glutes, from the hamstrings, making sure the core's stabilizing everything and plugging it into. Like I said, these are going to be things that we're going to do 8, 10 to 15 reps, usually like the 10 to 15, working on some endurance too. And it'll come either on days where we do kind of like work on weak links or towards the end, right? So also some great variations. So remember, right, we're using the back extension machine. We also have the glute ham, where in the glute ham, rather than having this angle, we would be pretty much completely, right, horizontal, and we would have room to do all these rows. So it'd be a little more challenging, a little harder on, like I said, holding with the hamstrings and glutes, and a little more advanced. So this is where we'll start most people off. You can also do band pull apart variations here, right? And there's endless varieties of things that we can do. Now we're just stabilizing in the back extension machine. Hey, right about now my back is pretty smoked, but I'm gonna keep it pushing. All right, so check this out. So this is a TBar Row machine, device, whatever you want to call it. Most of the gyms should have it. If they don't, go somewhere else, period. All right, but I mean, it really is, like I said, it's a great setup because we get, now think about this, we kind of did this on the bench that we did the chest supported rows. This is a lot more comfortable. It's set up to where you can go heavier. This bar has multiple, obviously, variations that we can do. So there's not too much to cover here, but I'm going to obviously fire the glutes. I'm going to engage my core. I'm going to keep the neck neutral. There's really 3 ways that we can go here, either super wide, pronated. Like I said, the elbow shouldn't come at all or slightly past my body, right? Otherwise, I'm getting that humeral glide, anterior humeral glide. So we can go wide. We can go a little more narrow here, pronated. We can go neutral. Then we can also obviously do supinated variations, wide, more narrow. Okay, now obviously with this, all the same things that we talked about as far as pauses, eccentrics, right? Doing quasi-isometrics, doing partials, right? So where we do full range, we just do 1.5 reps, depending on what you're trying to work on and build. Like I said, iso pulls where somebody's holding and you're constantly pulling. I'll cover that in another blog post, video, and article as far as all the different things we can do. But this is a great way to go heavy on horizontal pulling, and we'll be able to do sets of 5, sets of 6, heavier stuff that a lot of people most of the time don't do. TBar Row, great tool. If you don't have it, find somewhere that they do. But if you do have access to it and you're not plugging into your programs, make sure you put it in. All right, now we're coming to the we're going to do a lot of band horizontal rolls here, just a lot of band variations for pulling. Now the thing is, at Vigor we don't have a cable pulley machine, which I love cables actually, believe it or not. But this will give an example of the things you can do if, like I said, if you go to a gym and you have like I said, the cable machines where you can set up. This is the different variations you can do. You can actually use different bars. So some of the stuff that I'm going to go over that you can do with bands, because there's a constant tension on them. I'd actually probably set this up a little bit higher, working as we go along, right? All right. So if we're sitting, and we can either do the neutral rolls, right? So I want to already have some tension here. So we'd have neutral rolls. We can create variations where we're going pronated. Also where we roll up, right? So we're rolling up, getting more of that posterior delta engage. We can also do this single row. So if I put this one down, obviously we can go single arm. Same thing with here, where now we got to resist that rotation as well. So we got to use the core more. Now, the thing is, we'll also run an actual bar through this. So now we would go obviously wider. It'd be a barbell that we could also go to the chest, to the neck, so we can do rotation. From here, remember that we can do level. So now we're in the sitting position. From here, we'd raise it up somewhat. We could go to half kneeling. And this is the cool thing, because all of this can go up to standing, right? Just like in a gym, you'd go to cable standing positions, right? We can go half kneeling, which this is great for working core, and it takes obviously certain things out so that you can't compensate as much. So, right, so we can do that neutral position. We could do single arm, have offset, elbows out, right? So we can do all these. We can do barbell, wider grip, underhand, right? From there, we could do tall kneeling, right? So remember, these are all variations, progressions that become harder, okay? This is obviously much more challenging. Got to bring it more up. And then from there, we'd go to standing, right? We could do standing, offset, single arm, double arm, elbows out, right? And complete standing position. So there's obviously a lot of different variations. I wanted to show this from a pulley standpoint, because if you are at the gym, you can, like I said, this could be a pulley system. We like to use bands here just because we don't have a pulley system, but it's very, very effective. From here, we're going to drop this down so I can show you some crossover posterior delt stuff that you can do also in these different variations. And you can do also this at the gym with a pulley system, right? So now I'm going to go from the top down now. So you guys saw me come from the bottom up. Now I'm going to go from the top down. So getting the rib cage down, good position here. All right, so pretty challenging. I'm not trying to fall into extension here. If you can do positional breathing and hiss out on this, even better, so it doesn't, like I said, crank into extension. Just like we did earlier, we can do the same thing here in a half kneeling position. And we could do tall kneeling position here as well, right? You can also switch to, if you have a cable pulley, we actually like to get the hip involved, and we would actually use a handle for this, where we might turn in here and it'll be pulling, and as we go out, we're gonna keep the rib cage down, turn the hip, right? So pulley system, bands, all of them work great. We can bring it up higher, work into external rotation, pull, go into external rotation, or pull and go into face pull, right? Also, same thing, controlling it back, making sure we got good core control, right? Making sure that anterior core is engaged, glutes are fine. We can split stance it. We can use a lot of this stuff in, like for baseball, if we were doing, like I said, certain positions that people stand in, we might adjust it to that to make it more specific. But you can see how there's many, many different variations. In your program, if you do a 4-week cycle, sometimes all it takes is to switch the variation a little bit, and we're cranking in. Remember, the body adjusts to reps more than it does exercise variation, so it's really easy to just make minor adjustments and get a lot more change out of it. All right, we're back here with some pulling variations. Now we're starting to go more vertical pulls, and like I said, I showed a lot more horizontal pulling variations because we honestly do more of that, and most people have a tough time with overhead pressing, with, like I said, overhead flexion, and when that happens, like, you got to remember that you know, vertical pulling can sometimes not be the best thing. Also, if somebody is very extension based and their lats are literally locked in, you know, doing more vertical pulling is going to sometimes make that worse. So that's based on an assessment, like I said, but that doesn't mean that we don't have it in the programs. One, and if the person is ready to crank and get a lot of that into their program, then we're going to put it in. So once again, we don't have cable pulley systems, so like I go MacGyver on this stuff, and works really, really well. We can pretty much loop anything through, have handles, all of this stuff. So we're going to start with sitting down. So imagine that in a gym, like I said, the pulley system, you could be seated here. We're going to go, once again, get in a good position, get the rib cage down, neutral neck, and open up that chest. I think open up the collarbones. See, my rib cage is down now, so I'm getting good function, and we're controlling it back up. Right, from there, remember, we can always, just like I said earlier, you know, go into half kneeling positions, and we could use shorter bands. So we have shorter bands, or we can grab up higher, do the same thing now. Tall kneeling, right? So we can adjust that. Also, so I got this heavier band now. So imagine a straight lat pull down that we do in the gym. Also doing it with tall half kneeling in this position. So pretty damn challenging depending on which band you use. Having neck and neutral, breathing everything out. So we're getting positional breathing, we're getting lats to work. We can speed this up. Like I said, we can come up here, and we're standing now. We can stagger it. We can go neutral, squeeze the butt, rip the floor apart. So you can see that band's pretty challenging for me. Control it up, snap it down, control it up. We got our straight lat pull downs, right? So a lot of awesome variations that we can do with these. Remember, we can do single arm on this. We could have done single arm on a pull down, right? Unilateral, bilateral. We can still, plug in the same thing. Pause it. Control eccentrically. Explosive, right? Quasi-isometric somewhere with positional breathing. Right? So a ton of amazing things that we can do, and every single one of those variations can then be a new, like I said, new cycle of work. So you got endless stuff that you can play with here. All right, we're coming up to that pull-up, chin-up variations, and this could be a probably 30-minute video by itself. The things that I want to throw in are probably, things that maybe you haven't tried. There's really tons and tons of different things that we can do here. I'm just gonna like knock it out and give you some ideas because we all know the pull-up and the chin-up, right? One of the main things with the pull-up and the chin-up is a lot of times it's done wrong, and I want to make sure that the core is engaged, right? So we want to squeeze glutes, want to keep that rib cage down, keep the chin packed. And like I said, our pull-up variation, we can go really wide, we can go more narrow, right? So I'm gonna fire those glutes. And coming back down, chin-up variation. Full range of motion. Now, once again, we can do here negatives, pauses. Where we start people off a lot of times is ripping the bar apart and just holding 20 seconds, 25 seconds, 30 seconds. We'll progress it throughout the month. So just holding variations and pull-up, chin-up variations. Mixed grip. Right? Also, remember, all of these, we can do everything that we talked about in our horizontal rolls. Pause, eccentric, explosive ups. I'm actually, in a second, have my friend Hugh do some band resisted stuff so you guys see when we do speed work for this as well. Okay? Now, from here, there's, like I said, a lot of things that we can play around with. From adding tension. We can add tension by creating more movement. So we may go up to one side, come across, come down controlled, come up the other side, come across, right? So transferring force, we can like I said, do pauses in between quasi-isos where we're weaker, even just the bottom variations. You'll see a lot of people can't. And this is depending, like I said, this is you got to have an assessment to see where the shoulders are, whether these are some variations that people should be doing. But when we get that rib cage down, first just pulling those scapulas in and then driving up, okay? So a lot of people will drive forward and the shoulders will, like I said, pop forward, irritating that bicep, irritating that elbow, a lot of things going on. And like I said, it's very difficult to do chin-ups without kind of flexing that wrist, which can irritate a lot of things. Now, I'm sure that, like I said, you've seen a lot of these things. We can add weight with a weight belt, with a weight vest, and most people are usually doing higher rep ranges, where here we'll do 1 rep maxes, 2, 3, 5 reps with weight, which is big, right? From there, we actually have a whole section with the rings, but with the rings, the cool thing about it is that they rotate, right? So whereas with a barbell, with a straight bar, we can't rotate. So a lot of times when people have restrictions, they're going to start flexing, turning their wrist, which can bug the elbow, right? So with the rings, we can kind of get, we can have that hand rotate, like the commercial for the perfect push-up, right? But we'd be hanging, like I said, we got a whole section where usually we can freely hang here. But you can see here I'm going to be in this position where I'm firing the glutes and going from the bottom up. But I can start in this position and then finish in this position and going back down. We can add like tension to the lats by coming up and then swimming down, going wide, eccentrics, up in the front and wide, going down, okay? So using the rings, we can start going to flex knee position. So now we're changing leverages, right? Activating core. We could be squeezing a medicine ball in between also by doing it. So we got core engaged, fire the glutes to squeezing, get the adductors engaged, makes it more challenging. We could do L-sit positions, flex toes, way more challenging. These are all ways that we can do it without adding any weight, but making it more challenging. So, for instance, if I'm here in this position, flex the toes. Right, so that obviously becomes a lot harder. Now, one of the things that, one of the pull-up variations that if you've ever heard Pavel talk about, Pavel Tsutsuma, is the halo pull-up, right? And whether it's, I'll say, anatomically correct, right, but it does really work the lats. It makes the core work way harder. And what the halo pull-up is, right, we're going to grab the bar here. I'm going to break it, bend it. We're going to get our toes forward. We're going to push our heels together. So we're going to fire those glutes. The core is engaged really wide. So essentially, what we're doing, we get our feet in front. We squeeze the feet together. We get the core engaged, the glutes fire. We round a little bit, essentially, and drive those elbows out and bring that neck over the bar, right? So we're flaring our lats. Once again, we're not completely neutral here, but if you want to load the lats up, this is much more challenging. Now, obviously, I've been doing about 2 hours of rowing variations, but still, you know, if I can do 30 chin-ups or 30 pull-ups, I would probably be limited to about 8 to 10 very good ones here, and it would smoke my lats, okay? For most people, I love neutral grip. Now, this is a rogue attachment where it's a little bit of a thicker bar, but still, like I said, when people have beat up shoulders, we'll use the rings, we'll use neutral grip. We have neutral grip down there. There are thinner bars, but it is much better because, like I said, it's not going to constrict, internally rotate. So here, breathe it out. We can go straight up. We can also do sternum pull-ups, right, which so we can go directly up in neutral position, or fire those glutes, which I'm going to hang with. As I'm coming up, I'm going to essentially horizontally row. My core is going to be still engaged, but obviously I'm going to go and hyperextend there a little bit, okay? But all great variations. Things that we talked about earlier that we can literally add to anything. So when we were showing the cable rows, we could loop the band through the handle and do cable rows. We could loop the towel through the kettlebell, do kettlebell rows, right? So there's a lot of, we could loop both 2 towels through the barbell and do barbell rows. Now, this is obviously great grip work. Yes, it's going to smash the lats too because you have to hold on. You have to create that tension so it's synergistic. The lats are going to fire like crazy. Great work for, like I said, fighters, especially anybody using gi, without gi, anything that's gripping. If you have a weak grip, this is great stuff to work on some of this in it, either the beginning or the end of the workout. And we can, just the same as we can use it with any rowing variation and loop it through things, it's the same thing here for pull-ups, right? So we can go with 2. Let's hope that I don't rip these and I don't fall on my butt, but I can rip the hell out of these. Right, so it takes a lot of grip strength. We could loop one out. So this is almost a progression I like to use. If you hold higher up, if you start going lower down, it's a great progression to use to get to a single arm chin up, right? Because here I'm going to hold it and I'm going to pull up more with one side than the other. This one I can't get as much leverage on. Right, so I'm using more on one side, then we switch it. So these are absolutely great for grip work and grip strength. And like I showed earlier, we can also do things with the rope, which is going to be a little bit different, but we can also hang, we can stagger it, we can do it at the same position and do that. I also want to go a little bit out there, right? A great read. It's actually an old manual from James Smitty from the Diesel Crews called the Chaos Training Manual. Probably like, I don't know how long I got that ago, 7 years. Amazing stuff in there with, you know, chaos training, which is pretty much where it's unpredictable, essentially. And now we have many different things that we can do this with, and I'll have a video just about this. But this is a great variation in the chaos training, where actually we'd have a partner and start shaking the band, so it's partly vibration training. So I'm gonna load up here. Right? So that's very challenging. Obviously that went low. We could have went two different ones, looped them around. There's many different ways to do this. Somebody starts shaking it. So I have to start stabilizing and finding that equilibrium, which takes a lot of work on the stabilizers, and core is constantly engaged. You know, thinking about something like that is also, you know, what's chaotic. Think about a rock climber where he's in an unpredictable environment, and he's going to grab places that are going to be completely different. He's going to swing, right? The sooner that he finds that equilibrium is going to take a lot of stabilization, a lot of forces for him to get to that, right, neutral position. And a lot of ways of doing that is, like, for instance, doing pull-ups. Imagine from a jump, right? So if I jump into a pull-up and do them, how fast can I stabilize him, right? You can do this with loads. You can do this with bands resisted. A variation I like a lot is a resisted band. Start doing a pull-up. The partner starts cranking you in different directions. So not only is your whole body and trunk stabilizing those forces. It basically is kind of a carryover from, if you think about general physical preparation, right? Special and specific physical preparation, it kind of bridges the gap once you build that. Because if somebody's running in football, he's going to get hit. He's going to get offline. And how fast can you stabilize from that, I would say, chaotic environment? Now, we can apply this to lower body training, upper body training, pulling variations, pushing variations, you name it, right? So same thing with a sandbag or somewhere where the water is moving and I'm rowing, you don't know where it's going. Your body doesn't. So, but it's getting better at stabilizing those reactive forces, right? So that's some cool stuff that, like I said, I don't want it to just be cool. I want it to be something that helps you in your training. So as I'm showing you some of this, maybe you can start becoming creative, understanding the concepts of it, and applying it into your own training. And like I said, it goes for everyone, but especially athletes, where we start bridging this gap with these chaotic exercises. Now, some things that I didn't show you here, but once people get more advanced, we have monkey bars in the back, is just climbing, and every once in a while we'll say pull up, do a pull up, climb, chin up, climb, neutral chin up, climb, go to rope. So being creative with it, number one, like when training gets stale, implementing fun into the training, it makes people be more excited about doing it. So there's phases where putting that stuff in gets people amped up about doing different cool stuff, and that's going to progress their training because that has a lot to do with it, right? The mental aspect of it. But also you see a ton of variation. So sometimes we'll do finishers where we'll do a minute on the monkey bars, or somebody might do 30 seconds, climbing, pulling, switch into a rope, couple of pull-ups, switch back. Now, you got to obviously know where the client is at, know where you're at, whether that's something that you're capable of doing at this point in time. But if not, think about how these things can be implemented. Climbing is a huge thing that we use here. Like I said, it's a skill set, it's fun. Even, like I said, I'm gonna get a little bit ninja in here, but as you're coming up, right, where you can use your feet and come around and climb and do things, right, and switch around. So, right, so you can kind of get an idea, and I might move all around here And you might say, wow, that's pretty crazy. But there's so many different things going on. I'm working hip mobility in a deload environment. There's just a ton of great things going on. It's playful. I could go into, all the things that it does. But as you can see, variations are endless. I don't want to pigeonhole anything into a box. I want to get you creative ideas. As you can see, that's pretty challenging. But that you can use in your training program. So those are some of the pull-up, chin-up variations. I'm sure you can go online and find a ton of different stuff. I'm trying to gather it all together so that you have an idea of how to add more pulling variations that are going to progress your program, keep it fun, keep it challenging, and get you better results. All right, I seem to forget a couple of things, but you know what? I come back to it, so no worries. So a little four-way shoulder, I would say, not shoulder circuit, upper back circuit on the TRXs. There's 4 exercises that you can do obviously separately, but you can also do them together in a kind of like a little 4-way finisher. Like I said, as you can see, a lot of implements that we've used come back to the same things, whether we're using dumbbells, bands, TRXs, ropes. But here it is, basically the Y position, without me trying to slip here. So Y position, we're going to get that rib cage down. We're going to pull, like I said, from scap, coming up, positional breathing. So that's our Y. We can go our posterior flies here, or some would say scarecrows, right? Keeping that chin tucked, controlling it down. Then we have our external rotations. And or face pulls, right? So face pulls, we're going to come in. So that's our 4-way circuit. You can do each of those exercises separately, or you can do them by themselves. Like I said, always making sure that we get that packed chin, rib cages down, glutes are firing, good position. All right, now we're here to some, let's just call it strongman stuff. This is awesome stuff to implement. We're going to do, this can be either sled rows, or it can be, in this case, we attached it to a prowler. Now, there's multiple positions that we can do this out of. Obviously, we got our standing position. Keep that core tight, rowing. We can go in our half kneeling position. Core's working much more. We can go tall kneeling. We can go sitting, right? So we can sit, go tall, take those legs out of it. Some really, really fun variations, much, much more advanced. You got to make sure that people actually know how to stay nice and tight in this. Is push-up position. Right, or elbow plank position. Very, 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 very challenging on the core. I wasn't just making those noises up. So like I said, what we'll end up doing, this is actually a long rope. We'll load it heavy so that, once again, good positioning. We're really reaching, rowing, reaching, rowing, so that at the end, like I said, there's enough tension we're achieving what we want to achieve. Another variation that we love to do with the sled is pulling the sled in a reverse position, but keeping it locked in a row position. So imagine that I'm doing a sled pulls, pushing back, but I'm constantly locked in here. My upper back is working the whole time. We also like to load it really, really heavy, run back, pull, so we get a hip snap that's very specific. Like think about fighting in a lot of sports, right? So we're snapping through, we're pulling through, running back, putting on stretch, pulling through. We can do the same thing with face pulls, coming back with it, right? So we like to use, now remember, you just got to know what you want to achieve out of these exercises. Do we want to create constant tension? Do we want to create an explosive movement that's connected full body but has a pull involved? Like that may be something we either do for power, or we may put it into end to create, for power endurance or strength endurance. like I said, this starts falling into programming variables, but we got to know, right? Maximal strength, maximal tension, or we're using time under tension to create hypertrophy, muscle mass, so I'm not using all this geeky stuff. Or, do we want to create power? So there's this large continuum of things that we want to create through these exercises. All right, so we didn't go into the variables of rep ranges, speed, control, pausing, all of these different things, but you can start getting an idea. Obviously, certain exercises fit better into a maximal strength or tension, or certain things that we showed would fall in line with stabilization and connecting, right? So if we're doing even what I just showed there in a push-up position with the row, it's going to be tough to load it maximally, but we are working on certain things there. Now, these were all upper body pulling exercises, right? So I'm going to finish off by saying, some of the best things to build your back are I would say lower body exercises like deadlifts, right? Rack pulls, even like I said, squat variations, and RDLs, where we have to stay locked in. And remember, even just creating huge loads and keeping good postures is incredibly great for building upper back strength. And so those are exercises that obviously you want to have in your programs. And in this article, I'm going to add in some examples of a lower body split, or should I say a pulling split in bodybuilding, one in concurrent training, full body, or a lower upper split, so that you have a better idea of what I'm talking about. So that all falls in line with this. The reason why I wanted to put it all together is because, like I said, a strong back, strong traps, like that's a show of athleticism. Not only does that improve athleticism, it improves posture. Most people kind of live in this position. If we can coach, the exercises really well, and also start implementing more pulling, especially horizontal pulling, into programs, have variety, have more fun with it, make it challenging, make it smart, right? Then our programs will be better, we'll feel better, we'll perform better, and that's the goal of everything that we do here at Vigor Ground Fitness and Performance. So I hope you like this pulling series for the upper body, and let me know what else you'd like to see from the team here at Vigor, and we're going to put it together. See you next time. Ah.